The district lines have changed, so you would have to look at your registration on the State Board of Election to see which district that you're in. In terms of fairness and rotating, we're going to do the same questions for everybody, but I'll rotate it a little bit differently so that you can help better keep track of the opponents in the two separate races. So with that in mind, to start off first, the same as we did with the county commissioners, Deb, if you want to take a minute and introduce yourself and explain why you're running again.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. My name is Deb Butler. I currently serve in the House of Representatives. You know, about 25 years ago, a very dear friend of mine said, you know, Deb, I'm thinking about launching 2 publications. I'm going to call them the Greater Wilmington Business Journal and Wilma. I thought she was fairly crazy at the time. Her name was Joy Allen. Who's laughing now? Under Rob's leadership, these publications have become mainstays of this community, and so thank you for that. I was appointed to serve in 2017 by Governor Cooper. I serve on the Judiciary, the Commerce, the Banking, the Finance, and the Transportation committees, very business-centric committees that I actually was crazy enough to ask for appointment to, so I enjoy that role very much. I'm a lawyer downtown, I'm a business owner, I'm an investor. I have renovated numerous historic properties. I have served on the boards of the Historic Wilmington Foundation, the Cape Fear Green Building Alliance, and others. And I'm here today to talk about real solutions to real problems, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
John?
Good morning, thank you for having me. My name is John Hennett. I'm a second-generation Wilmingtonian. Owned a restaurant in downtown Wilmington called the Underground Sandwich Shop. I've been a real estate appraiser. I've served as president CEO of Wilmington Downtown Inc., doing economic development and revitalization of our downtown, where I worked with over 50 companies to locate downtown that created or located over 500 jobs downtown. Since 2013, I've been a commercial realtor, and I kept that same focus, working with small realtors. And over the last 2 years, I've been focused on the renewal of Market Street, looking at some of the nuisance hotels and bringing in new investment to those properties for turnover. And I'm running because in 2020, my wife and I were sitting on the front porch, and the overreach at the state and county level just had us so frustrated that she looked at me and said, one of us has to do something. My name's John Hennett, and I'm glad to be running. Thank you.
Ted, would you like to go next?
Good morning. My name is Ted Davis, Jr., and I was born and raised in New Hanover County. First and foremost, I am very pro-business. Ever since I have been in Raleigh, I have consistently been recognized by the North Carolina Chamber as a jobs champion, and also consistently getting pro-business recognition from NC Free Enterprise. I've also received legislative awards for my work with the tourism industry. North Carolina now is the best site for business in the entire nation, according to Site Magazine and Forbes Magazine. And the reason that I am running for re-election is because I've been a part, not just talking, but walking the walk, a part of making North Carolina in the shape that it's in right now. And I want to make sure that we continue to move in a forward fashion. Thank you.
Amy.
Good morning. My name's Amy Block-Deloach, and I am running as a Democrat for the North Carolina State House in District 20. I want to thank the Business Journal for inviting us here today. I am not a career politician. I'm actually the stay-at-home mom that decided it was just time to join the fight. I know I'm on the right side of history, and I'm excited to bring this common sense approach to Raleigh. I've had leadership roles in multiple organizations, which has given me leadership experience that's based on consensus building and listening to all sides of an issue. I'm asking for your support so I can protect our environment while holding corporate polluters accountable, support our public schools, and making sure we can protect a woman's right to bodily autonomy. I also want to make sure that we don't pass bills like HB2 that drive businesses out of the area. I'm a fourth-generation native Wilmingtonian whose family's been here for 100 years, and I'm excited to be with y'all today.
Okay, so we're going to start off with transportation, which between the increase in traffic and the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge future, I believe comes up more and more these days. And so we're going to start with the District 20 candidates. And Ted, starting with you, with declining DOT revenue and increases in road construction costs, what are the alternative ways to fund critical road infrastructures and improvements?
Well, first of all, as we all know, traffic congestion is a terrible problem that we have in New Hanover County. We need to work in getting our roads better shape, our bridges in better shape, and as was alluded to earlier, we do need a new bridge across Cape Fear River. As you know, we have a revenue source for handling traffic through the gas tax. Also, in the 2022 budget, the state has allotted more money to address infrastructure problems that we have with traffic. So as we need to continue to have the state to provide income and revenue so that we can address the problems that we have that I've just mentioned.
And Amy?
Traffic is a bit of a problem here, but we have a path through this. It is not by adding more lanes, it's by adding better public transportation. And if we add more bus routes, as well as the frequency of this bus route, as well as a robust Amtrak system throughout the state, that would help. By adding these public transportation, it would help our workforce get to work. It would help our climate by having less emissions, and we could reduce the traffic. The good news is that Biden just passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So we have some funds that we can write grants for to help with helping with our bridge as well as the traffic problems.
And in the District 18th race, we're going to start with John on the same question.
Yeah, I was really active downtown, and when 3rd Street was being renovated, I imagine many of you remember that, and the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge failed on a Thursday. Traffic was backed up on Shipyard, South College Road, Carolina Beach Road, North 4th, North 5th, North Kerr, Independence Covell, MLK. It was backed up all over the city, and thankfully that following Monday was a holiday. We do need to replace the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge, but it's after we get a new crossing across the river. And sometimes we need local leaders willing to pick a fight. And I think we need to have a southern crossing of the Cape Fear River Bridge. And the Memorial Bridge can get replaced soon after.
And Deb?
Well, having served and continue to serve on the Transportation Committee, there are a couple of things that I see that are critical. We are going to have to figure an alternative way to fund transportation-related issues because the gas tax isn't going to do it anymore, which is why in our budget this time we had to subsidize transportation because electric vehicles don't pay gas tax, right? So we are going to have to revisit the formula for funding transportation. And I know that there is a really interesting pilot program happening in Oregon. It's called Origo, and they are trying to come up with this funding mechanism because it's not fair for electric vehicles to use our roads and not contribute to the maintenance of them. So that's one thing. And secondarily, we are going to have an expansion of electric vehicle charging stations across this state because that's the path forward, that's the future. We need to be ready for it.
Okay, and this time we're going to start with our District 18 candidates so that everyone has the opportunity to hear the question blind and start. And Deb, we're going to start with you. And that is an audience question about Medicaid expansion, which continues to come up in North Carolina as being one of the 12 states that has not expanded coverage under the Affordable Care Act. So what is your stance on that, and what part of it do you support or not support?
Yeah. Well, we absolutely should have expanded Medicaid 10 years ago. $26 billion, 500,000 people in the coverage gap. It is critical that we do that. We know, for example, that at this point, physicians associations, hospital associations, and just about every chamber of commerce that I've spoken to supports Medicaid expansion. These are our tax dollars. We've already paid them. It costs us nothing. And our dollars are now going into surrounding states. The other thing is, uncompensated care at the hospital through the emergency room is bankrupting rural hospitals. We can avoid that by expanding Medicaid and allowing people to have preventive care and medication instead of just flooding our emergency room. If you've been there recently, there are 100 people at any given time in our emergency room. we need to correct that with Medicaid expansion.
John?
I think with the root cause of our problem is that the Affordable Care Act never covered the working poor. And so I think that we have to expand Medicaid coverage to cover the working poor. I think that we need to make sure that we have a work validation or verification program. And I think that in the next year, we'll need to separate the certificate of need process and take that up separately. I think that the certificate of need needs to be reformed, not removed, not replaced, but simply reformed to allow more competition, which will hopefully drive down prices. So for now, I support Medicaid expansion for verification of work.
And Amy, could you start us off on?
North Carolina is one of only 12 states in the country that have just flat out refused to expand Medicaid. This is refusing our own federal tax dollars to help our most vulnerable citizens. We would be able to cover 500,000, provide care for over 500,000 of our citizens. We would protect our rural hospitals that are being closed, and we would reduce medical bankruptcies. It's way past time that we get this done. On a personal note, when my son was born, he had a life-threatening brain tumor. It was through a Medicaid program that he received services, and he's now a thriving, productive citizen of North Carolina. I can't even begin to imagine what life would have been like if I didn't have this program. I'm thankful for it, but I know that everybody in North Carolina deserves medical care.
And Ted?
Hey,
Yes.
okay, thank you. I favor the expansion of Medicaid if it's done the right way. The situation that we have right now is that the House passed a bill to look at expanding Medicaid, which went to the Senate, but the Senate would not look at it. The Senate passed a bill that expanded Medicaid, but it also included certificate of need changes, as well as a SAFE Act, which means that nurses and family practitioners can practice without supervision of a doctor. 3 very controversial issues in one bill. The House would not look at that because we wanted to look at Medicaid separately, certificate of need separately, the SAFE Act separately. What you have right now is that the House, well, the Senate and the governor and the hospitals are trying to work out a resolution of the certificate of need so that the Senate will be willing to move forward and that the House can agree with. If that can be done, we can move forward, and I think that we will see that being done by the next session.
Okay, we have another health-related question from the audience, and sticking with our rotation, Ted, you'll have this question first for the District 20 candidates. And this deals with, right now, women have access to abortions in North Carolina. Since Roe versus Wade was overturned, that could change depending on which way the power shifts in the legislature. Where do you stand on this, and how will you work to keep access or remove access in North Carolina?
Abortion is a very tough moral issue. You have got people on the far left that want to be able to have an abortion up until the day the baby's born. You have people on the far right that don't want to allow a woman to have abortion at all. I believe that a woman should have access to an abortion, but with reasonable restrictions. Presently, the law in North Carolina is that a woman can have an abortion up to 20 weeks for any reason whatsoever. Then after that, she can have one in the case of incest, rape, non-viability of the fetus, or danger to the mother. I am a supporter of the law. Therefore, I support what the law is in North Carolina. And I hear all this about how, oh, if the Republicans get a supermajority in the House, they're going to get rid of abortions. Well, I can tell you right now, I would never vote to get rid of abortions totally.
Amy?
Abortion was a constitutional right that was taken away from women. It doesn't make a bit of sense to me. My daughter right now has less rights than I did. I am 100% pro-choice. Government does not belong in this decision at all, and I trust women to make what the right decision is for them.
Okay, and for the District 18 candidates, John will start.
Keep in mind that the current 20-week provision was passed in 1973 by a Democrat-controlled legislature. I don't think it's unreasonable. I think any views more extreme than that are exactly that, they're extreme. I think there needs to be reasonable limitations and consistent with public opinion. I think it needs to remain legal. I would prefer something in the 12 to 15-week window, but with exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother, and viability of the fetus.
And Deb.
Well, let's get it straight. The Speaker of the House has said that you can expect an abortion ban put forward if a supermajority is achieved in Raleigh. Now, I don't think anybody can ever truly be free if they're not in control of their own body. Women make difficult choices. They deserve the right to plan their family. It affects career choices. It affects educational choices. And men should care about this issue just as strongly as women do. Because planning a family is just that. It is a fundamental right of privacy, and we should support that, all of us. Because if they come for your constitutional rights, they're coming for yours next.
Okay, we have another question from the audience. This one switches to economic development, and Deb, you'll answer first. What type of tax credits would you support to continue economic development across the state?
You know, tax credits have to be very judiciously meted out. We have what's called the JDIG program at the state level, and they do a pretty good job of evaluating what types of jobs we want to recruit. You know, from our point of view here in Eastern North Carolina, I feel that we have had enough smokestack industry to last a lifetime. We are at the end of the Cape Fear River, which has served as a dumping ground. We know the struggle that we're having with forever chemicals in our water. So we want to recruit jobs that are based in biotech or finance. You know, we have all these wonderful financial companies coming to Wilmington. So we want to incentivize well-paying jobs that don't contaminate our environment. And I think that we're on the right path to doing that, but we have to be very careful because at some point, no one will want to live in Eastern North Carolina if we continue to pollute our natural resources.
John.
I support incentives for economic development. I also think that we need to, when our economic development agencies announce their targeted sectors, the industries that they're going after, our higher education, our community colleges, and our schools need to immediately start skills training for those programs. We've announced aeronautics for years. There's not one school doing aeronautics. There's only one or two schools doing aeronautics training in our area. So I think that we need to do a better job at the educational level to make sure that we have the skills training to go in place. For example, 20 years ago, UNCW was a liberal arts college with a marine tech program. PPT started growing, and they had to train students to be ready for PPD. Similarly, Live Oak had to put in training programs. So it's important that we make sure that our higher education, our community college, and our high schools are training people ready for the types of jobs that we want to target to come to our community, but I certainly favor economic incentives for development.
And Ted?
I too support the economic development for bringing businesses, and that's strongly through our environment, making sure that they keep our environment safe and provide for the schools in North Carolina that will provide the workforce for them. The city has grown and the economic development has just blossomed, which has made this a desirable area for so many people. And with these movement forward that we've had, we've just got to make sure that it's done in a clean and safe and able to provide the education for the people that are coming to North Carolina.
And finally, Ted.
I was the county commissioner for 16 years, and I supported economic incentives. I've been in the House for 10 years, and I also support incentives there. But I don't believe in just giving someone an open check. If we're going to give a business an incentive, then we have to have benchmarks. By that I mean to say is you will get an incentive payment after you have invested so much money in infrastructure, or you will get an incentive payment after you have put into place jobs at a certain number, earning a salary at a certain amount. I also favor tax credits because whether or not you like business incentives or tax credits, it's part of the game. And if you don't take part in that, and if you don't offer that, then you're going to have situations happen like we have had where businesses will simply go elsewhere.
John, we're going to start with you on this next question. It's going to be very broad based on what your priorities are. But when you look at state funding, what areas are you in favor of decreasing or increasing?
Certainly think we should increase transportation, particularly as the infrastructure of bridges is needed. We have a high need threshold here in Wilmington. I think we should increase teacher pay, specifically master's pay, credentialed teacher pay. I'd like to see an increase in funding for those credentialed and master's pay teachers to self-choose to locate at Title I schools. The elementary schools that service our downtown are the worst performing in our community, and it's a wonder why we can't get young professionals, upwardly mobile young professionals, to invest in downtown and stay downtown. Often when their children start school age, they relocate out to the suburbs to better performing schools. So I think we need to certainly increase teacher pay, and if we're going to say we're going to do it, we actually need to vote to increase teacher pay.
Deb?
Teacher pay is absolutely something. We are 34th in the country right now. And, you know, it breaks my heart to see teachers leaving careers that they absolutely love because they just can't afford it, because they're working at the Pizza Hut on weekends to make ends meet. Now, you can say that we have given teachers increases in the most recent budgets, but it's nowhere near where we need to be. We are nowhere near the national average. So we cannot retain the best and the brightest to teach our children, and that's a crime. The second area we need to spend more money is the Department of Environmental Quality. Friends, we need to do a lot of work to change the discharge permitting process so that forever chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and other things don't wind up in our drinking water. Well, there's no way we're going to lure industry to this region if we can't provide safe, clean drinking water. Now, there is a woeful shortage of toxicologists and epidemiologists in that department. They don't have the resources they need. But we also have to change this discharge permitting process so that if your effluent that you put out can't be proven to be safe, you don't get a permit to put it in our water.
And Ted, same question for you all. What areas would you decrease and increase in state funding?
In addition to the things that have already been said, I would like to see an increase in the funding for the film grant. I've been the leading proponent for film in the House ever since I've been to Raleigh. I fight for it every time the budget process comes up. Right now we have a $31 million a year film grant amount that is recurring. That is not enough. Because we get away from the old tax credit where we had big productions such as Iron Man, what we have right now is a grant system where we really are limited with the income that we can give people to come in and do productions. So we're really focused on TV and low cost projects being done. Film is a clean industry. It does not pollute. It gives the people here that are locally, it's so talented, a job. When they get a job, they earn money. When they get money, they spend it locally. It has a very big trickle-down effect.
And Amy?
It's all about education and the environment. We have got to spend more money with the education, make sure our teachers and their staffs are being well paid. We've got to fund more after-school programs so that our students have a safe place to be after school. And we need to make sure that our rural areas have the sufficient funding to provide an equal education for all of our students. The environment's the other place. We have got to make sure, like Deb said, that we have clean drinking water, and we've got to make sure that they are held accountable before putting pollutants in our air and water. So as far as the film industry is concerned, I agree with Ted. That's something that we do need to support. And we can support them by keeping bans on abortion from coming to this state. Recently, Arkansas, we just got a huge film project from Arkansas that left because of the abortion ban there.
Okay, and Amy, you get the first crack at another audience question. What incentives at the state level will draw larger industry to Wilmington that will keep graduates of UNCW and CFCC to stay in this region rather than leaving to a growing Raleigh and Charlotte?
Well, it's our natural resources here. We need to protect those and keep them clean. Wilmington is a unique area with our natural beauty and the beaches and the river. If we keep these strong by keeping the water safe and by supporting our school with the education, providing a stronger workforce for these businesses, that will all attract them to come here.
Okay, and Ted?
Well, obviously, Wilmington is a wonderful place to live, or we wouldn't be having so many people be here. So I know that is something that can keep graduates of UNCW, Cape Fear Community College, and wanting to stay here to work. But the main thing is you've got to have jobs. In other words, you can go get an education, but if you can't use that education with getting gainful employment, you're going to go where you can. So we need to still recruit good, clean businesses to come to our area that can offer jobs so the graduates of our community college and the university will have a place to go and work. And that will benefit us all because of the income they earn, they can spend here locally.
Okay, and Deb, if you'll start.
You know, I think the single most important incentive money can be used to expand broadband across this state. Look, we've got an advantage on many places because people want to live and work here. And with remote working, they're able to do that now. So if we have broadband, do you realize that there is broadband in the Nile River Basin, but not in places like Chatham County? I mean, we have got to have affordable, high-speed internet across this state so that people can live and work anywhere they want to. And if they have a choice of where they want to work and live, it's going to be here, right? And then we got to build that bridge because they're coming.
Joe.
I think the most important thing for us to remember is that education is the first step and most important key to economic development. Since 2014, our third grade achievement levels have fallen nearly 100% in reading and math. The third grade end of grade testing in 2021, more than 50% of our third graders are not proficient in math and reading. Ladies and gentlemen, your hair is on fire. We're not going to be able to recruit business if we can't get an educated workforce. So I think that's number one for me.
Okay, great. And as we finish up our time with our House candidates, we have one final question we want to ask everyone, and starting with Deb. And that is, what makes you uniquely qualified to hold this House seat?
You know, I gave a talk last Saturday in this room about the state of political decorum in this country. As a young lawyer, I used to watch political speeches. I know that sounds kind of wonky, but I think about the words and the aspirational nature of politics back then. I think about John Kennedy, he told us about public service. I think about Martin Luther King and bending the arc of the moral universe. You know, we're all in this together. And the state of politics today breaks my heart every single day, quite frankly. And so my goal, or the only way I think we put that genie back in the bottle, is to speak to one another with words of kindness and respect. I think that's my job as a leader in this community. I don't like all the vitriol. I don't like all of the painful things we see in some of our elected officials. It's incumbent upon us to do a better job, and that, I think, is my strong suit. Thank you.
John.
Well, I've worked in a couple of different industries and business, and I like to think of myself as a common sense, Main Street and moderate person. And Deb talks about talking, but the thing that rose her to fame was not her talking, it was her screaming. And it was her screaming in 2019 that made her an ineffective law legislator. And her divisive nature, and oftentimes her voting record, she's on the wrong side of an issue with only 3 or 4 other legislators. She talks about increasing teacher pay. She's only, out of 5 votes, 4 she's voted against increasing teacher pay. 4 out of 5 times she's voted against state port funding. 4 out of 5 times she's voted against funding UNC Wilmington, Cape Fear Community College, and she voted against funding important nonprofits like Eden Village and the Harrelson Center. So it's important that we have somebody who has the ability to get along, reach across the aisle, and work in a common sense and mainstream manner.
And Ted, what makes you uniquely qualified to hold the District 20 House seat?
I think my 16 years experience as a county commissioner, being very familiar with the local government and the needs of the people here locally, helped me to be the best candidate to be elected back to the House in District 20. Also, since being in the legislature, I have been chairman of numerous committees. I'm presently the chair of the Judiciary Committee. In other words, and I also play a role as a member of the House Leadership Committee. I know how things work. I know where the skeletons are buried. I know how to get things done, which my record would show. I think all of those things qualify me for re-election because, as I said earlier, we need to keep going in the great direction that we are coming. Please remember all the things that have been done since I've been in Raleigh, I've been a part of. And I want to continue to be a part of helping us to move forward. Thank you.
And Amy.
As I mentioned, I'm a fourth-generation native Wilmingtonian. Nobody loves Wilmington as much as I do. And I'm a lifelong Democrat, but I grew up here. I started preschool at First Pres, and that's where all my friends are from today. And they were lifelong Republicans. I've always worked with Republicans and getting along. I mean, never really had any issue at all until the last 4 years, it seems. But I am uniquely qualified because of the work that I've done with boards and building consensus and listening to both sides of an issue, and then not being afraid to make the decisions that might not always be the most popular, but will be the most fair, and everybody in the room will know that they've been listened to.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all our candidates for House seats. And as we are transitioning